Have you ever been in a situation where someone accused you of something, and you immediately felt the urge to defend yourself? What if I told you? That moment is exactly when you lose. Today you will learn Machiavelli's most ruthless psychological trick to flip power instantly. Never defend yourself, ever. Imagine this. Someone calls you out publicly, challenges your character, or questions your motives. Your natural instinct, almost automatic, is to jump up and defend yourself, to prove them wrong, to clear your name. But this instinct, though human, is precisely what Machiavelli warns against. Because in the world of power, perception, and influence, the moment you defend yourself, you declare without even realizing it that the other person's accusation holds weight. You show the world that their words can harm you, that their judgment matters, and that you feel compelled to explain yourself. Now let me ask you something. If a king, a ruler, or a person of true authority is accused, does he rush to justify himself? Never, for the very act of defending is an admission that the opinion of the accuser carries power. And power, as Machiavelli teaches, is not seized by truth, fairness, or innocence, but by the appearance of control. The second you begin justifying yourself, you transfer power from your hands into theirs. You step into the position of the accused, and they step into the role of the judge. Machiavelli understood human nature with brutal clarity. He knew that people do not look at facts first. They look at behavior. They look at confidence, posture, tone, reaction. And he knew one thing with absolute certainty. When you defend yourself, you reveal fear. Because only those who fear losing their reputation fight to protect it. The strong, the admired, the feared, they do not scramble to explain. They let their presence speak louder than their words. They let silence or indifference communicate that the accusation is beneath them. And here's the fascinating part. The crowd, the people watching, your colleagues, your friends, they take cues not from the truth, but from how you respond. If you react emotionally, they assume the accusation has touched something real. If you answer quickly, they assume you're scrambling. If you try too hard to justify your intentions, they assume you have something to hide. Machiavelli knew that defensiveness is one of the fastest ways to look guilty, even if you've done absolutely nothing wrong. Look at the most powerful leaders in history. When confronted, they rarely defend themselves. They redirect, they minimize, or they ignore. Their calmness creates an aura of confidence, and confidence, more than honesty, is what convinces crowds. Because humans are wired to follow strength and certainty. When you defend, you lose both. But why does defending yourself feel so natural? Because from childhood, we are taught that if we explain ourselves, if we provide enough context, people will understand. We think that people want the truth. Machiavelli reveals a harsher reality. People don't want the truth, they want a story. They want a perception that aligns with their emotions. And when you defend yourself, you enter their story instead of controlling your own. In the political courts of Renaissance Italy, accusations were constant. They were weapons used to test loyalty, provoke reaction, or expose vulnerability. The princes who survived were not the ones who argued their innocence. They were the ones who understood that reacting is submission. The moment you react, you're dancing to someone else's tune. And the moment they can make you react, they own you. Consider how the modern world works. In workplaces, in relationships, on social media, the loudest accusations often come from the weakest people. Those who cannot achieve power directly, so they use noise instead. When you defend yourself against noise, you validate it. When you ignore it or treat it as insignificant, you create contrast. That contrast shows strength, and strength alters perception more effectively than any explanation. Machiavelli also understood the psychological truth behind accusations. They are rarely about the accused. They are about the accuser trying to elevate themselves. When someone attacks you publicly, they're trying to create a hierarchy where they stand above you. Defending yourself places you beneath them, struggling upward. But refusing to defend establishes that you never stepped down in the first place. And here is where power subtly shifts. People admire those who remain unmoved, those who respond with indifference, those who let the attack die under its own weight. Because nothing weakens an accusation more than the accused showing no interest in it. When you defend yourself, you bring energy to the attack. When you disregard it, you drain that energy and leave the accuser looking desperate, childish, or insecure. This is why Machiavelli insisted that rulers, leaders, and anyone seeking influence must learn to resist the instinct to defend. Defending is emotional. Power is unemotional. Defending is reactive. Power is proactive. Defending makes you small. Indifference makes you untouchable. And this is the core message Machiavelli delivers. The truly powerful understand that the battlefield is not in proving who is right, but in shaping how others perceive the situation. The fight is won or lost not in arguments, but in how you position yourself in the eyes of others. Imagine someone steps forward and throws an accusation at you, a jab meant to provoke you, unsettle you, and pull you into their arena. Most people respond by opening their hands, showing their palms, and saying, "No, no, that's not what happened." But Machiavelli teaches the opposite. He teaches that when you respond with defense, you have already surrendered. You've allowed the accuser to frame the battlefield, to dictate the rules, and to control the emotional climate of the exchange. And a prince, Machiavelli reminds us, never fights on ground chosen by his enemy. So if the powerful do not defend themselves, what do? They choose one of three paths, each calculated, each deliberate, each designed to shift power instantly. Attack, redirect, or stay silent. These are not reactions, they are strategies. These are the tools a ruler uses not to prove innocence, but to maintain dominance. And when applied correctly, these three moves turn any accusation into an opportunity to rise above the attacker. Let's begin with the first strategy, attack. This doesn't mean yelling or showing aggression. Machiavelli would never recommend losing composure. The attack he speaks of is psychological. When someone accuses you, instead of addressing the accusation, you question their motives, their credibility, or their timing. You turn the spotlight around. Suddenly, the accuser is forced to justify why they are attacking you. They become the defensive one. You flip the entire power structure in seconds. A prince doesn't answer questions. He creates them. He doesn't explain. He makes others explain themselves. And the moment they begin defending, they appear insecure, uncertain, and exposed. The crowd shifts. The narrative shifts. The power shifts. But perhaps you prefer a subtler approach. That's where redirection comes in. Redirection is the art of moving the conversation away from accusation and toward higher, more strategic ground. Instead of responding to the charge, you elevate yourself above it. If someone questions your integrity, you shift the focus to your achievements, your contributions, your broader purpose. If they accuse you of wrongdoing, you speak of responsibility, leadership, or challenges you've overcome. People quickly forget the original question because you've replaced it with something more compelling. Machiavelli understood that minds can be guided not by truth, but by attention. And attention is magnetic. If you pull it toward strength, the weakness targeted by your accuser disappears into irrelevance. This is redirection at its finest, transforming attack into an opportunity to showcase authority. Then we have silence. the most underestimated weapon in the arsenal of power. Silence is not absence. Silence is dominance without effort. It's the message of someone who does not consider the accusation worthy of a response. And Machiavelli knew that silence creates psychological pressure. When you do not respond, your accuser becomes agitated. They repeat themselves. They exaggerate. They panic. They begin revealing desperation, insecurity, or bias. And the more they speak, the less credible they appear. Meanwhile, your silence paints you as composed, confident, unbothered. Silence creates distance, and distance creates mystique. And mystique is one of the purest forms of power. When used intelligently, these three strategies: attack, redirect, or stay silent, allow you to control not just the narrative, but the entire emotional landscape of the situation. They keep you in command of the frame, because the frame determines everything. If you stay in the frame, your accuser sets, you're trapped. But if you shift it, you become untouchable. These strategies work because they leverage human psychology. People are drawn to strength and repelled by defensiveness. They trust those who seem certain and question those who seem nervous. They follow the person who looks like they know what they're doing, even if the facts are not in their favor. Machiavelli saw this pattern in rulers, soldiers, courtiers, and common citizens. Over and over again, he witnessed that the one who controlled the frame controlled the truth. And these three responses: attack, redirect, silence, are methods of controlling the frame so completely that your opponent loses ground without you ever stepping onto the battlefield. Think about how conversations unfold in your own life. When someone provokes you, your immediate reaction is emotional. You want to explain, you want to correct, but emotion makes you predictable. Machiavelli's strategies make you unpredictable. When you attack strategically, the accuser is thrown off balance. When you redirect gracefully, their accusation dissolves. When you stay silent, their power evaporates. All three create psychological dissonance in the mind of the attacker. They cannot advance because you have refused to play the game by their rules. And something else happens. Those watching, whether a room full of people or a silent audience online, begin to respect you. They may not even understand why, but they feel the shift. They sense authority, because true power is not about shouting louder or proving your innocence. True power lies in refusing to be pulled into the emotional chaos of others. It lies in maintaining the upper hand through strategy, not explanation. Machiavelli believed that a ruler must always appear composed, in control, beyond the reach of petty attacks. And nothing communicates that more effectively than strategically choosing when to attack, when to redirect, and when to remain absolutely silent. Picture a throne room, not of marble and gold, but the modern world you live in, your workplace, your social circle, your online presence. Everywhere you go, people are constructing narratives about you. They whisper, they speculate. They observe your actions, your tone, your choices. Machiavelli understood long before our time that power does not rest in raw truth, but in the story people tell about you. And if you do not shape that story yourself, someone else will, usually to your disadvantage. This is why Machiavelli insists that you must control the narrative before others do, because narratives are the battlefield of perception, and perception is the currency of power. Most people make the mistake of reacting to stories others spread, trying to correct misconceptions or disprove rumors. But by the time you react, it's already too late. The narrative has formed, the frame is set, and you are now fighting uphill, trying to escape an image someone else has painted. Think about what happens when someone spreads a rumor. The first version of the story people here becomes the truth in their minds. The human brain clings to the first explanation it encounters, and everything that follows gets filtered through that initial impression. Machiavelli knew this instinctive bias. He knew that whoever speaks first, whoever sets the tone, whoever claims the narrative first gains a massive advantage. A prince who acts early shapes the battlefield. A prince who hesitates becomes a prisoner of the stories told about him. So how does one control the narrative? The first step is to speak with clarity and intent before anyone else does. When you act decisively and present your interpretation of events immediately, people adopt your version as the default reality. They anchor their beliefs on your words, and any conflicting narrative that follows must now fight against the psychological weight of your first impression. And first impressions are notoriously difficult to overthrow. That is why Machiavelli teaches that the strong do not wait to be judged. They define themselves in the eyes of others before judgment can even begin. Another way to control the narrative is through framing your actions in a higher purpose. When you explain your motives on your own terms, confidently, strategically, and proactively, you create a shield around yourself. For example, if you make a controversial decision, you don't wait for critics to speculate. You immediately present it as a necessary move for the greater good, for stability, for long-term benefit. People love narratives that sound noble, purposeful, or visionary. And once they accept your framing, even if they disagree privately, they will struggle to oppose you publicly. Machiavelli understood that people justify the actions of leaders who appear confident and purposeful, even if the actions themselves are ruthless. There is also a more subtle form of narrative control, the slow construction of an identity so strong that people's default assumption about you is favorable, powerful, or admirable. When you build a consistent reputation, competence, strength, reliability, intelligence, any negative story that arises seems inconsistent with the image people already hold. They dismiss it before it gains traction because it contradicts the narrative you've been shaping over time. Machiavelli believed that a prince must cultivate an aura, a persona that overshadows any isolated accusation or rumor. When your overarching narrative is strong, individual attacks bounce off like arrows striking armor. But what happens when you fail to control your narrative? Others rush to fill the void. In politics, in business, in personal relationships, there is always someone ready to speak in your place. And once their version spreads, you are trapped, because now every word you speak sounds like a rebuttal, a correction, a defensive plea. And as Machiavelli taught, defending is weakness. It signals guilt, uncertainty, or desperation. By letting others define you first, you become someone trying to catch up, trying to explain, trying to fix perception. And the one trying to fix perception never looks powerful. Controlling the narrative is not about manipulation in the malicious sense. It is about recognizing that humans are storytellers by nature. We make sense of the world through stories, not facts. When you give people a clear story to believe, they cling to it. When you don't, they create their own, one that may not serve you. And Machiavelli knew better than anyone that the world is not governed by truth. It is governed by perception. If people believe you are strong, you are strong. If people believe you are weak, even your strengths appear fragile. To control the narrative, you must anticipate misunderstandings before they occur. You must define your actions before others define them for you. You must present yourself with such confidence that others feel compelled to adopt your interpretation. And above all, you must maintain consistency, because consistency creates credibility. When your words, actions, and tone align repeatedly over time, your narrative becomes self-reinforcing. People see patterns, and patterns are powerful. So every interaction, every choice, every silence, every statement contributes to the narrative people hold about you. Machiavelli's wisdom reminds us that power is not seized through argument, but through the careful shaping of perception. When you master the ability to shape the story, and to do it early, you no longer fear accusations or rumors. You stand above them because you have already established the version of yourself the world believes. Imagine someone hurling an insult your way, or questioning your motives, or doubting your intentions. Most people feel their chest tighten, their pulse rise, the urge to react, to correct, to prove themselves. But Machiavelli understood something timeless about human nature. The moment you show emotional turbulence, you reveal vulnerability. And in the theater of power, vulnerability is blood in the water. Others see it, others sense it. And those who envy you or oppose you will strike harder the moment they see that their words can wound you. This is why Machiavelli teaches that distance, emotional distance, is one of the greatest shields a person of power can possess. It is not coldness, it is not apathy, it is control, it is mastery of self. It is the ability to stand in the midst of accusations, misunderstandings, or provocations without letting them reach your inner core. The emotionally distant do not react. They choose, they decide, they calculate. And in that space between stimulus and response, they gain a tremendous advantage over anyone who tries to unsettle them. Let's look deeper at what emotional distance truly means. It does not mean shutting down your feelings or pretending to be unbothered. It means maintaining sovereignty over your emotional world. It means refusing to let external forces dictate your internal state. It means that no matter how loud the external noise becomes, you remain silent inside, calm, composed, unshaken, because when others attempt to provoke you and find no reaction, they lose their leverage. Their tactics fail, their power dissolves. Machiavelli observed this again and again among rulers and generals. Those who reacted emotionally were manipulated with ease. A whisper in the wrong ear could trigger them. A rumor could send them into panic. A challenge could bait them into foolish decisions. But those who maintained emotional distance were unpredictable, impossible to sway, and frightening in their calmness. People fear what they cannot read. They fear those who do not reveal their emotional cards. And that fear becomes respect, whether earned or not. When you distance yourself emotionally, you no longer respond as someone needing approval or validation. You respond as someone who does not depend on public opinion for stability, and that alone shifts the power dynamic. Because emotional people seek to be understood, powerful people understand that not everyone is worth explaining themselves to. Emotional people take everything personally. Powerful people treat everything as strategy. Emotional people reveal their inner world. Powerful people reveal only what reinforces their image. Distance grants you something most people never possess: clarity. When you are not swept into emotional storms, you see motives clearly. You notice patterns others miss. You recognize when someone is provoking you intentionally. You detect manipulation before it takes hold. You become the observer, not the participant. And from that elevated vantage point, you can navigate social conflicts, workplace politics, and personal challenges with the precision of a strategist, rather than the desperation of someone fighting for reassurance. Emotional distance also creates mystique, and mystique is a powerful asset in Machiavellian philosophy. When people cannot predict how you will react, they tread carefully. When they cannot decipher your emotional state, they cannot weaponize it. They begin to assume you know more than you show. They begin to interpret your silence as strength. They begin to attribute discipline and authority to you, even when you say nothing at all. Mystique is not something you announce. It is something others project onto you when you withhold emotional reactions. And here's something Machiavelli knew better than many modern thinkers. Human beings amplify whatever emotion is presented to them. If you show anger, their anger grows. If you show fear, their dominance grows. But if you show calmness, if you show indifference, if you respond with cool restraint, their emotional heat fizzles out. They cannot sustain a fire that you refuse to feed. In fact, your calmness often makes them question themselves, doubt their intentions, or even soften their aggression. Emotional distance does not just protect your inner world. It actively reshapes the external one. Think about the people in your life who hold significant influence. Notice how the strongest ones rarely react impulsively. Notice how they pause before speaking. Notice how they maintain a steady tone even when challenged. This is not coincidence. This is not personality. This is practiced discipline. It is the art of projecting stability when others are losing theirs. It is the art of remaining rooted while others sway in every direction. Machiavelli saw this as a hallmark of true leadership. Leader must appear composed at all times, for the people follow not truth, but the appearance of certainty. Emotional distance also protects you from self-sabotage. How many opportunities have people ruined because they reacted too quickly, said too much, or let their feelings dictate their choices? Machiavelli warns that emotional reactions expose weaknesses you did not intend to reveal. They create openings for others to exploit. They turn small challenges into major conflicts. But by maintaining distance, you ensure your actions arise from intention, not impulse. You become the sculptor of your destiny, not a puppet of your emotions. And in the end, emotional distance is not about suppressing who you are. It is about elevating who you are. It is about stepping above the chaos instead of drowning in it. It is about harnessing your emotions rather than being overpowered by them. It is about creating a presence so composed, so disciplined, so unmoved by the trivial provocations of others, that your very calmness becomes a statement of power. In the end, Machiavelli reveals a truth that most people never understand. Power is not taken by force. It is taken through perception, strategy, and self-mastery. You lose the moment you defend yourself. You rise the moment you refuse to play the role others assign to you. By never defending, you deny your enemies the satisfaction of setting the frame. By attacking, redirecting, or remaining silent, you seize control of the narrative before it ever slips from your grasp. By shaping your own story, you prevent others from writing one for you. And by keeping emotional distance, you transform every accusation, every challenge, every moment of pressure into an opportunity to demonstrate composure and authority. This is the Machiavellian way. Never react, always calculate. Never explain, always position. Never defend, always remain above. Because the one who holds the frame holds the power, and the one who holds the power is the one the world follows.